Okay, so no one asked me, but I have some ideas about how the Giants and Daniel Jones need to proceed in their contract impasse. That's coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, your host. Happy to have you with us on Wednesday. It's the hump day, last Wednesday of the month, actually, which means next week we've got the scouting combine. So much coming up. And coming up on today's show here on the Locked On Giants podcast, nobody asked me, but I have a few suggestions for the Giants and Daniel Jones to break through what apparently is developed into a contract impasse. And so I'm going to give you some thoughts on that. We're also going to answer a couple of listener questions that have been submitted. So as always, thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. All right, let us get into it. Again, nobody asked me, but I have an opinion just like the rest of you do regarding this situation with Daniel Jones. Now, some of you have said the Giants should let him walk if he's looking for $40 million up. Some of you have said franchise tag him and let that be the end of it. And some of you have just said the Giants will figure it out. Well, yeah, the Giants will figure it out. No question about that. But here's where I kind of stand on this, given the developments, the latest developments, which include, since I last recorded a show on Sunday, it includes the fact that Daniel Jones has switched agents, which was kind of surprising. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Although if you're looking for a link, one of the agents that's representing Daniel Jones, I believe his name is Brett Kessler, represents Sterling Shepard, who Daniel Jones is really good friends with. So there's kind of a connection there, I think. Maybe Sterling, well, not maybe, I'm pretty sure Sterling probably, recommended his guy. And, this guy, Brett Kessler, is going to be one of the agents, reportedly, according to Liz Mullen of the Sports Business Journal, going to be one of the 3 agents that are representing Daniel Jones. But let's talk about how they can break what appears to be an impasse. Now, the NFL tag deadline, the NFL tag window officially opened yesterday. So let me just backtrack a little bit here. Technically, it means nothing for the Giants until March 7th. March 7th is the last day to use the franchise tag if they so choose to, which in this case, they probably will if they don't get a deal done. But here's where I think the two sides need to kind of meet in the middle. Daniel Jones is reportedly seeking a deal that would pay him upwards of $40 to $45 million per year. If the Giants don't want to pay that, which I don't believe they do. I think the Giants are looking more along the lines of $35 million a year for Daniel. It's going to result in the franchise tag. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a fallout. And part of that fallout, obviously, is not something that a lot of people are talking about, but I'm going to mention here. Number one, the $32 million for the franchise tag is going to come out of the Giants cap right away. So guess what that means, folks? That means the team is going to have a severe shortage of money to add quality free agents. They are going to basically have to shop in the bargain bin basement again, like they did last year. Now, for a team that is still not one player away, this is a team that needs help on the offensive line, at receiver, at cornerback, at inside linebacker, at defensive line, interior defensive line. There are a lot of needs here. And not to mention, I haven't talked about their own free agents, Saquon, Julian Love, and any other guys that they might want to extend. Dexter Lawrence comes to mind. So the fallout, if the Giants have to use that franchise tag, means they're not going to have a whole lot of money to get done what they need to get done. That may force them to maybe have to delay extending Dexter Lawrence, as an example. I don't think it will, but it might. It may force them to say, okay, you know what? If we were going to plan to extend Andrew Thomas, we're going to have to wait now another year. That might force them to have to pass on maybe a free agent that they were looking for that's going to cost them a little bit more than maybe somebody who went from that second level of free agency. So there's a bunch of reasons right there within terms of not having that $32 million that otherwise, if the Giants were to reach a deal with Daniel, you figure his cap number would probably be in that first year around $12 million. So that right there is concerning. Now, what is also concerning is that I could potentially see, and now again, I know the Giants are going to probably cut Kenny Golladay. They're going to probably restructure Leonard Williams, not restructure, extend Leonard Williams. And they might try to do Dexter Lawrence and get that number down. But here's the problem, folks. The Giants, if they have to franchise tag Daniel Jones, besides the fact that now Saquon Barkley doesn't have to worry about the tag and can basically play hardball with the Giants might have to pass on re-signing Julian Love, because I'm not sure there will be enough money to re-sign Julian Love. First off, I think Julian Love, I don't think he's a slam dunk to come back. I know the Giants had talks with him, or his representatives, I should say, at the bye week. Nothing got done. I believe Julian wants to come back, but I also believe that Julian is going to go where the money is. And if a team comes along and offers Julian Love upwards of $8 million plus, he's not coming back. I'd be stunned if he comes back. And if the Giants have to use that franchise tag on Daniel Jones, no way they're going to be able to match that. So the idea of potentially keeping your core team members in place kind of goes out the window if you have to use that kind of money to keep your quarterback. So that being said, what can the two sides do? How can they maybe reach a common ground that works for both sides? I've been preaching a 5-year deal with an option bonus in year 4. And again, what the option bonus does is it kicks in brand new money to raise the APY starting in the year in which that option bonus is included. So unlike a signing bonus, which automatically kicks in as soon as the contract is signed and prorates over the life of the contract up to 5 years, an option bonus sort of works that way, but it doesn't kick in right when the contract is signed. So you make it an option bonus. You can make it a player bonus, a player option, or a team option, or both. You know, both sides obviously need to want each other, but you do it after 3 years. And here's the logic behind that. The logic is that if Daniel Jones continues to play well, he continues to ascend and show that he can be in the upper echelon of NFL quarterbacks. After 3 years, give him the option to say, all right, you know what? I want out. I want to redo my deal. This way, his deal stays on par with the contracts at the position at the time. Because remember, the salary cap is going to go up. So to go for a straightforward 5-year deal and just, gradually have that increased, if you're Daniel Jones and you're looking for the long term to make nice money, that's probably a good way to do it, the way I'm proposing. 3 years with an option bonus. And if the option gets declined by either side, you renegotiate. Daniel will still be young enough. He'll still probably be in his prime. And it basically becomes a win-win for both sides. Now, the drawback, if you're Daniel Jones, is nothing is guaranteed. You can get injured, obviously. Stuff can happen. You can, regress. You want financial security. But I think with this type of deal, he can get that. And here's the other thing I would do with this particular deal. I would guarantee Daniel Jones more than what Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson are getting. And I have those figures for you. The guarantee, the fully guaranteed money is basically what percentage of the contract is guaranteed. For Kyler Murray of the Cardinals, it's 69.4% of the contract. For Josh Allen, 58.1% of the contract. And for Russell Wilson, 67.3%. So if I'm doing a trade-off with the Giants, between the Giants and Daniel Jones for guaranteed money, I'd say, look, Daniel, we do this this 5-year deal, but with an option bonus in year 4, we'll give you at least 70% of the contract guaranteed. That should provide for him the financial stability that maybe he is seeking. So that's how I would break it down with Daniel Jones, maybe break through this impasse. Now, for all I know, maybe that's been proposed and it's been rejected. I don't know. But in looking at it and what makes the most sense, look, the Giants are going to need to basically continue to rebuild the roster. They need to add at certain positions. They are projected to have 11 draft picks. And while that would seem like more than enough to fill some of the holes that they have, you want to have a mix of veterans and rookies. And I'm not saying that, necessarily shopping in the bargain bin is a bad thing. But if you're the Giants and you're looking to take the next step forward, if you're looking to build on last year, you want to start looking to upgrade the talent across the board. Because yes, you got by with some bargain bin guys, but imagine what you could do if you had higher quality players at certain positions. All right. What about Saquon and a situation for him? Stick around and I'll tell you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season might be over, but the NBA season is in full swing. And now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 if their first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sports app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to the spread and more. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I am your host, Patricia Traina. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you spending part of your day checking out the content, and hopefully you are enjoying the content here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Some quick programming notes. Tomorrow, Thursday, Locked On Giants Live returns. Traina, Tana, and Dog. We're going to kick things off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. The audio will be replayed, obviously, for those of you who like to listen to us on the audio platforms. And we're going to talk contracts. We're going to talk free agency, combine. There's so much to talk about as roster rebuild season goes into full effect starting really this week. So that's going to be fun to certainly catch up with the guys and talk about all that stuff. And then also on Friday, I have Damian Parson, who is one of our new hosts over on the Locked On NFL Network. Damian is a national scout for the Draft Network. And he's one of the co-hosts of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. So he's going to come on with me and we're going to talk draft prospects. Where's the strength of the draft? Who are some of the sleepers? All that good stuff. It's always fun for me, at any rate, to get different perspectives on the draft because there's so many opinions out there, different names to keep an eye on. That's how you learn about it. And I'm looking forward to having Damian on the podcast. He's a real nice guy. I think you guys are going to like him. So hope you'll tune in. That's Friday's show. And then we'll send you off into the weekend. And next week, of course, is the Scouting Combine. So, all right, let's get back to our topic at hand. Nobody asked me, but I'm going to give opinions anyway, because that's what I'm here for, partially. That and it disseminating information. But anyway, Saquon Barkley and the Giants also appear to be at somewhat of an impasse regarding their contract situation. Now, again, based on reports, which may or may not be true, Saquon is said to be wanting upwards of 15, possibly 16 million a year, which would put him in Christian McCaffrey money. The Giants are said to want to keep him somewhere along the 12.5 to 13.5 million range, which is compatible to where maybe I think Nick Chubb is being paid, where I think I want to say Alvin Kamara is being paid, I think, or is it Dalvin Cook? It's one of those two. Where Mixon is being paid in Cincinnati, where a bunch of guys, there's a whole cluster of running backs that are falling. Derrick Henry, I think, is one too, that are falling within that 12 million to 13 million range. So how did the Giants and Saquon break this cycle? Especially if the Giants don't have the franchise tag to use on him. Guys, I wish I had a better answer for you, but if Saquon's side is going to insist on a $15 to $16 million APY, I see the Giants walking away. I don't see the Giants, giving him that, because for the reason I said before, if you've got to put 32 million towards Daniel and you don't have, the franchise tag to use on Saquon, how are you supposed to upgrade the roster? Seriously. I mean, you can't. I've done the math, and it would be really, really difficult. Again, you risk losing Julian Love in the process. And maybe, some of you out there might be saying, well, it's not a big deal. They've got, Jason Pinnock, they've got Dane Belton, they could take over for Julian Love. That depends on your perspective. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be the end of the world, but, do you really want to lose Julian Love, who has been a pretty good player for them? So that being said, if you are the Giants and Saquon, how do you break through this impasse? Well, first off, if the Giants do not get Daniel Jones done by March 7th, if I'm Saquon's agent, I probably am not going to stress about doing anything with the Giants until March 7th, till I know where that franchise tag is going. All right. Because for Saquon to sign before March 7th right now would be foolish. Just, on his agent's part, it would be foolish to sign him this early. Wait to see what happens with the franchise tag. And yes, there's a risk that maybe the Giants and Daniel get something done and Saquon gets the franchise tag. And now instead of getting, the 15 million APY he wants, he loses out and he gets only 10 million. All right. Not the end of the world, though. It might be for him because he's losing about 5 million, but that's the risk you take. So again, the solution, I think, for Saquon, a short-term deal, about 3 years, because Saquon just turned 26. So, a 3-year deal with maybe a voidable year. So technically a 4-year deal, but you've got a voidable year, and out after 3, and just drive the guaranteed money home. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most, I think, for players. APY is that's window dressing. What's the guaranteed money? If you, think about it. If you and your colleague were making the same amount of money and you were on a contract and it was based on, a negotiated contract, and your employer guaranteed you more of your contract, said, look, no matter what happens, you're guaranteed 70% of your deal, whereas your colleagues only guaranteed 50%. Wouldn't you rather have the higher guarantee? So I'm just thinking that in terms of, how the Giants structure these contracts, go with the guaranteed money. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. And, APY, yeah, that's nice if you can be up there in the top 5 or the top 3. But if you don't live to see the end of that contract, meaning if your career ends or your contract is terminated and you don't see the end of it, then is it really worth it at the end of the day to have a high APY when you could have had higher guaranteed money? So for me, if I were advising on this, I would just say, look, take the shorter deal, take the APY of about 13.5, for inflation. Let's be fair here, but go for a higher guaranteed money, a guaranteed percentage. The Giants would like Saquon back because obviously he's a big part of the offense, but everything hinges around what happens with Daniel. And that's what makes this so interesting yet nerve-wracking, because there's so many scenarios that could come out of this. And at the end of the day, if the franchise tag does end up going to Daniel, I understand and I don't begrudge him for wanting to get the most he can. We all do that. No matter what type of job we're in, we all look to get the most money possible. But at the end of the day, sometimes you got to ask yourself, okay, do I want to make the most money possible and the heck with the rest of the team? Or do I want to win? And if I have to take a little bit of a discount to make this work so that, my GM can upgrade the team further, get me, a better offensive line, get me, better receivers, get me better, defensive interior. That's the question I think Daniel Jones needs to really do some soul searching on. And, however he decides to answer it, that's going to say a lot about the direction the Giants and Jones ultimately end up going. But bottom line, folks, Daniel Jones is not going anywhere because they will franchise tag him if they don't reach an agreement. I can't sit here and say the same thing for Saquon. I really can't. I wish I could, but I can't at this point. So we will see what happens because, like I said, next week is the combine. Next week, all the agents will be in town for their annual meeting. Obviously, the GMs will be in town to do the scouting. And there will surely be conversations with both Saquon's reps and Daniel's reps. And what comes of it? Well, that remains to be seen. And it's going to be interesting and fun to follow. And we, of course, will have the details as we get them. All right, coming up next, I have a couple of listener questions here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and now we're going to answer some listener-submitted questions, as I try to do in every show. Rather than have a Twitter Tuesday or a Twitter Thursday, I encourage you guys and gals to send in your questions. You can send them to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet them to me with the hashtag AskPTrain, or you can also text them to me. The information is in the show notes if you want to send your questions in, and I'll try and answer a few of them every show towards the end of every show. So let's do that, shall we? All right, let's see what we have here. We have a question from Pat L, who wants to know in a nutshell, all right, he's right. Relates to Kadarius Toney. What are teams able to do when they meet and interview a draftee or a draft prospect? It should be. And I guess he's tying this back into, Kadarius Toney not working out. So Pat, thank you for the question. First off, with Kadarius Toney not working out, got to remember he was brought in by the previous regime. So you've got a brand new regime, you've got a new GM, you've got a new coaching staff. Sometimes what happens is there's a coaching staff and things just don't work out. There's personality conflicts. There's people don't see eye to eye, whatever the case may be. So, that could have been part of the issue. But to your question about what goes on, teams, I believe, are allowed to bring up to 30 players to their facility. And I think the way it works is they can interview them. They can sit and watch film, pick their brain and, put a scenario on the screen and say, okay, here's a play you were in. What were you thinking here? What went into your decision to do this and that sort of thing. There's also medical checks, obviously. There's meeting the rest of the team, the key people, marketing, PR, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like a job interview. I don't recall off the top of my head. I think they can work out, but it's at the player's discretion if they actually go through a workout. I know if it's a local workout where, it's an area school, the Giants can bring in a whole bunch of, players from an area school and have a workout, like a group workout. But really, there's a lot that goes into scouting a draft pick, a potential draft pick. Scouts will go down, obviously, and talk to the college coaches. They may talk to the professors. They might talk to people in the community. You might see the position coach that corresponds with the player go down and do some homework too. So I think it was a couple years ago, I want to say, or maybe it was last year. I don't remember exactly. But the Giants actually did a series on Giants.com called Finding Giants. And it really gave you good insight as to what the coaches and the scouts do to find information and get the most complete picture on the prospective players. They really do an extensive background check. And, sometimes something happens, that pops up that maybe nobody saw coming. But for the most part, I think they pretty much get it right, pretty much. Not always, but, given the amount of time and money, especially for picks that are going to be like premium picks, day 1 and day 2 picks, you want to try and get those right more often than get them wrong. So hopefully that answers your question, Pat. Thank you for submitting that. Okay, we have a couple more. Yes. All right. Up first, we have a question from Jarek L., who writes, being that it's a possibility that Daniel Jones gets franchise tag in order for the Giants and him to reach a multi-year agreement, if the Giants can't come to terms with Saquon Barkley and he walks, what are your thoughts about how the Giants can go about establishing a good ground game with our current O-line in the process of a rebuild? Jarek, thank you for the question. I do think the Giants are going to add to the offensive line, particularly the interior offensive line. I think you have to. You've got to get a long-term answer at center, preferably a guy who has played center. And, you can make the argument that a good offensive line can make any running back look good, but I don't think that's totally true. I mean, a good running back obviously has to have vision. A good running back needs to be able to pass protect if called upon. So as far as what I think they're going to do if Saquon should walk, they're going to draft. It's that simple. I mean, you can find guys in day 3 of the draft to boost your running game. The Chiefs did so with Isaiah Pacheco. The Giants a few years ago did so with Ahmad Bradshaw, who was a 7th round pick. So it's not out of the question to find a decent guy. The Bills had Devin Singletary, who I believe was a 4th round pick. You don't have to have the 2nd overall pick as your running back. I think that's a luxury, to be honest with you. So I'm not worried about that, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to see Saquon leave, but will it be as catastrophic as I think some people think it will be? I'm not so sure it will be. Not if the Giants do their homework and they get a running back with good vision, a guy who's elusive, a guy who's not afraid to lower his shoulder, and a guy who could be taught to pass block if it's not something he already knows how to do. So, I look at this also, another way. I know Saquon can be a receiver out of the backfield. I get that. But you know what? If you're going to upgrade the receiver group, how often are you really going to be throwing to the running back? I would think you'd throw more to the receivers and the tight ends, but I don't know that. But, doesn't the logic kind of make sense that Saquon doesn't, if Saquon comes back, he doesn't have to do it all, that you're going to upgrade the talent? So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to see Saquon leave. Great guy, great representative of the franchise. But if he goes, it's not the end of the world. All right. I mean, I'm sure some of you will disagree with me about that, but that's how I feel. So thanks for the question, Jarek. All right, let's go to one more question from Andrew G., who, by the way, Andrew, I hope your wrist is feeling better. Thank you for sharing that with me. I sympathize with you. Believe me, I have carpal tunnel as well from when I do a lot of writing. So I hope you feel better. So your question, Andrew's question is, I saw that Daniel Jones switched agents. Are you surprised it happened at this stage in free agency? Why do you think he did it? And also, I heard a report of him wanting $45 million per year. And what do you think of that? All right, multiple questions here. Am I surprised that Daniel Jones switched? Yes. I think, and I don't know this for certain, that maybe Daniel Jones and Sterling Shepard had a conversation, and maybe Daniel wasn't happy with how the contract negotiations were going. And maybe Sterling said, hey, why don't you check out my guys over at Athletes First? And I think I mentioned earlier in the show that Brett Kessler represents Sterling Shepard. So there's a connection there if you want to, make that link. So, look, it's within Daniel's right to choose whatever agent he wants. I'm not going to sit here and say, dude, what are you doing? Or say that he was stupid or that he was smart for doing it. But I am surprised that it was done this late in the process, right before the start of the tagging period. Maybe that was strategic. I don't know. But it's done. What's done is done. And regarding him reportedly wanting $45 million a year, again, I think that's a little rich. But as I have said before on the podcast today, it's all about the guaranteed money. The APY is window dressing. What are you pocketing at the end of the day, at the end of the contract? If you don't see the end of the contract, how much is definitely going in your pocket? That's what I think gets lost with a lot of people. They're so focused on APY, and that's, we use it in the media and as a measuring stick, but it's never really a true APY at the end of the day. Because if a guy doesn't finish out a contract for whatever reason, then what good is that APY? You can throw it out and you can say, oh, okay, the guy had a 3-year contract for, 18 million, but he only played 1 year. So his APY goes down from 6 to 1 million, if you think about it. But how much guaranteed money did he get? That's what's important, Andrew. So yeah, in terms of, the APY for the cap purposes, that's where that comes into play. And I don't think Daniel Jones is going to see 45 million. I mean, we're talking Patrick Mahomes money. And Patrick Mahomes, 2-time NFL MVP, 2-time Super Bowl winner. I'm sorry, Daniel's not there yet. Will he ever get there? Maybe, but he's not there yet. And like I said at the start of the program, if I'm Daniel, makes sense to take a shorter term deal, gamble on yourself, and then maybe look to raise your earnings, after so many years, after 3 years are up. But we'll see how they play it. Everybody has different perspectives. And as I said at the top of the show, as part of this theme of the show, nobody asked me, but that's my opinion, because that's why you guys come here. You come here to hear what I think about things, and I appreciate it. And I, of course, am always interested to hear what you guys think about it. So if you're watching on YouTube, drop me a comment in the box below. Let me know what you think. If you're listening on our audio platforms, feel free to reach out with an email. You can tell me I have no idea what I'm talking about. You can tell me, yay, you know what you're talking about, whatever the case may be. Anyway, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you. Again, tomorrow night, 7:30, Locked On Giants Live with Trina, Tana, and Dog. Do not miss it. We'll have the audio up probably shortly thereafter. And then on Friday, Damian Pearson is going to be my guest. We're going to talk NFL draft, and we'll also preview the combine, which starts next week. So hope you will tune in. Until next time, everybody, I'm Patricia Trainer, your host. We will see you tomorrow